introduction, we would like to show you a little video about a woman who tried to sell an iPhone clone on Craigslist. This is an auction site similar to eBay. She thought she was closing a great deal, but instead she almost got ripped off big time.
It is a new take on an old scam that thousands of people have fallen victim to. You may have heard about the Nigerian fake check scams, but this time around the con artists don't want your money, they want what you're selling.
This one affects people who use Craigslist and eBay. If you're among those, you could be getting ripped off. Consumer investigator Jennifer Lukey has the real deal now on this scam, how it works, and how you can protect yourself while selling online.
Cindy was trying to get rid of an iPhone clone on Craigslist.
That's my post, and where's the...
When she got what seemed like an enticing offer.
There's a guy whose son is a missionary, and he's in Nigeria, and he wanted to pay me an extra $50 than what I wanted for hassle and the shipping for it if I would ship it to Nigeria for him.
And he put his money where his mouth was, or so she thought.
I've done a lot of PayPal receipts, and it's identical to a PayPal receipt. And the address it comes from is even a PayPal address, so it looks absolutely authentic when you open your email.
So Cindy packed up the phone, went to the Fulton post office, and sent it certified mail.
A day later, the package made it here to the North Syracuse post office, which is the hub for this entire area. When a postal inspector saw it, they actually called Cindy to make sure that this was a legit transaction, because they told her there's been a lot of scams going on with items being shipped to Nigeria.
I went online and checked my PayPal account, and there was never the money in the PayPal account. It was a fake transaction ID number.
Lucky for Cindy, she was able to get the phone back. She's out the $22 it cost her in shipping, but it's nowhere near what she'd have lost if it weren't for an attentive postal worker. That's The Real Deal. I'm Jennifer Lukey.
So today we will be talking about online auction fraud, more specific about the fraud aspects of the online auctions. We will start with the main types of fraud. We will continue with some tips and tricks to prevent you from fraud on eBay. And we will end with a discussion about the feedback system.
This chart shows that we shouldn't underestimate the impacts of online auction fraud. It is the second most common internet crime after non-delivery. And there could be a discussion whether non-delivery itself doesn't belong to the category of online auction fraud, whether or not. Online auction fraud is a very broad expression, but what does it all include? Well, first there are the small, trivial kinds of fraud, like shell bidding. When friends of the seller make a false bid in order to raise the selling price. Failure to pay doesn't need any further explanation, I think. Misrepresentation, one of the oldest tricks in business, when the value or the condition of the merchandise turns out to be overestimated. And then there's also buy and switch, when the buyer returns a similar item that has been damaged, with the excuse, it is not what I expected. The seller's only option is to return the money. And then there are the more severe kind of fraud, like internet fencing, the activity of selling stolen goods through the auction. The most common kinds are the small ones. The consequences aren't extremely grave, but doesn't make them less annoying, of course. The past few years, online auctions have experienced an exponential growth, just as auction fraud. Studies confirmed a clear correlation between the growth and auction fraud. Maybe something we can keep an eye on in the future.
To avoid this kind of auction fraud, I will explain you some tips and tricks you can use to avoid these auction frauds. So to introduce the methods, I will use a recent example. It's an example from this weekend from eBay, and it's about a cell phone. The first thing you have to do is to check the description and the photos. So if there are no photos, or the photos aren't clear, or the description is short and unprecise, you might be a little bit worried. In our example, you can see that there are some photos, they are quite clear, description is quite long and precise, so I think we may assume that the buyer really has the item and there isn't damage, it's in good condition. So after checking the description and the photos, we have to check the seller's nationality, because when the seller lives in another country, it isn't always safe. Like in the video we saw, the seller was from, the buyer was from Nigeria, so Nigeria, it doesn't sound very safe. In our auction, the seller lives in the United States. It would be better when he lives in Belgium, because inside the country it's safer, but okay, the United States. The third thing you have to check are the shipping charges, because it's possible when the product is very cheap that the shipping charges are very high. In our example, when I gave a quick look, I saw everywhere that the shipping was free. So, okay, that sounds very good. But when I went looking a little bit further and I selected Belgium, I saw that the shipping charges were $45. So that's something you really have to look at. Another tip is to never make a deal outside the auction, because it may sound very nice deal, but you are at very high risk of being cheated. When making a payment, prefer using a credit card over an online transfer, because when using a credit card, it gives you the opportunity of a chargeback in case there is fraud. So in our auction, you can use credit cards like MasterCards and Visa, and they use PayPal. It isn't always safe, but in eBay it's something that they use a lot. So. Another tip is to use an escrow service. An escrow service is a service that stands between the buyer and the seller. So the buyer gives the money to the escrow service, and the escrow service will give the money to the seller when the deal is made and the product has arrived. So in our example, you can use escrow.com, which is a service used by eBay. So if the seller and the buyer agree, you can use it. And my last trick is the most important one. It's follow your common sense. If a deal sounds too good to be true, it probably is. So now I will explain another method how to prevent fraud, which is the feedback system.
I think you all heard of the feedback system. I think many will agree with me. The feedback system, as we know it today, is one of the main fundamentals of eBay's success. But let us examine this from the point of view of the average eBay buyer like you and me. You will ask yourself the question, how on earth can I be sure that this guy in Malaysia will get me this GPS system as is described, and without his cheating on me? I think this kind of skepticism and distrust is just completely normal when you first buy your first eBay item. eBay was aware of the trust problem, and they came up with a solution. The solution was the feedback system as we know it today. But let's be clear, they didn't invent the feedback system. They were just the first to use it on a big scale. Let us say they introduced it to the world, and it appeared that this solution has become one of eBay's main trump cards. The system where sellers and buyers give each other a feedback is just a waterproof system. They write about their experiences doing businesses with each other, and it's easy to summarize because positive feedback keeps you going, negative feedback helps you closing the books. That may be clear because all the feedback given to you is available for all eBay users. But eBay went even further, and they came up with the term power seller. A power seller is someone who traded a large volume of goods and comes close to 100% positive feedback. Once more, in the case of the average eBay buyer like you and me, this means yes, you will receive the item as described soon.
Thank you. So to summarize, the feedback system assures that a trustworthy seller earns a lot of money and thieves get nothing. Looks like a waterproof system, right? Well, it isn't. As a matter of fact, it is as flawed as it could get. There were times that buyers could check the overall score of a seller to decrease their risk of being scammed 10 times over. But today, unfortunately, it's just not that simple anymore. This is because among the family of scammers there were some smart chaps who discovered that positive feedback doesn't have to be earned necessarily. They have found various ways to circumvent the feedback system. So how did they do it? I'll explain 3 ways of the numerous ways there are to obtain positive feedback. The first is purchasing positive feedback. There are also several ways to purchase positive feedback, and the first way is the direct purchase. There are auctions with titles such as free tickets to earn positive feedback, or the most positive way to earn positive feedback, or basically any title with the words positive and feedback in it. The buyer then simply buys the item, and both buyer and seller get undeserved feedback. Another way is to buy several items on eBay that sell for under $1. This gets you a yellow feedback star and thus makes you a liable seller. How beneficial is a feedback system when a yellow star costs you only $1? Now let's move on to the second method, feedback fraud. Feedback fraud comes down to this. You activate multiple eBay accounts. If you want to look like a very trustworthy seller and you have lots of time to spare, 100 accounts will be just fine. Then you use that account to set up sales for several items. You buy those items yourself, you give yourself positive feedback, and that's all there is to it. This is actually the simplest way for thieves to obtain positive feedback. And last but not least, there is feedback theft. As you might have suspected, feedback theft is when someone takes feedback that doesn't belong to him. Basically, it is when a scammer hijacks or takes over control of a seller's eBay account. He then uses his good reputation in order for possible buyers to trick them into paying him or her money. And that hijacking commonly occurs when sellers are tricked into giving their personal information on fake eBay or PayPal sites, etc. Another problem that the feedback system is coping with is something that refers to the Cold War. I suppose some of you have already heard of the term MAD, or Mutual Assured Destruction. This refers to the fact that both Russia and the US would have been able, thankfully, to destroy one another. It seems that eBay has evolved into something more alike to those nations in their nuclear arms race. Okay, I might be slightly exaggerating because it actually comes down to this. When someone gives another person a negative feedback, he would be likely to receive a negative feedback in return as retaliation. So suppose you wanted to buy something on eBay and you get poor service, such as not getting your product at all. What would you do? Yeah. Yeah, right, like most of you would do with the feedback system in mind, but then you might be harmed twice. You have now lost your money and your eBay reputation.
So in general, we can conclude that every system has loopholes. It's only a matter of time before someone benefits of them, legally or not. But by using our advice, the worst can already be avoided.
And you mustn't use those scamming methods yourself.